What's up everyone, Raf here from B&C Camera. Being a photography whiz comes down to knowing and understanding the camera settings. Knowing your camera settings will improve your photography skills and produce outstanding photographs. Understanding everything a camera could do can seem like an exhausting task. With so many functions, buttons, and dials, it can feel overwhelming. In this video, we'll be giving you a rundown on what the common functions and settings are for most digital cameras. If I'm going a little too fast, the script was modified from the meticulous work done by Vanessa, and the full article can be found at the B&C blog post site. And with that out of the way, let's jump right in. Now I'm going to go over once more the 3 essential settings for any camera, which is aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. If you want full details, check out the prior video we did on the exposure triangle. Aperture. The aperture is the opening of the camera lens that allows light to enter. Apertures are measured by f-stops. This setting will directly affect the exposure in your photographs, which will also affect the depth of field. Many cameras will have a dial at the top to switch the aperture. If using this setting and you want to capture a wide depth of field like a landscape photograph, use a small aperture between f8 and f11. If you want to blur out some of the backgrounds in your photo though, you'll need a wide aperture like f2.8 to f5.6. Shutter speed. Another setting related to the exposure is shutter speed. Shutter speed controls how long the lens stays open. Shutter speed is measured in seconds and plays a role in the motion of photos. The longer the shutter stays open, the more chance of motion blur. When the shutter closes fast, it captures something in motion. If you use a higher number, the shutter will stay open longer. You can find the dial for this towards the top of the camera. It's best to use a slow shutter speed to capture motion blur. It is also beneficial when shooting in low light conditions. Try to stick with a shutter speed from 1/60th of a second to a few minutes. You can usually switch this to a bulb mode camera setting. To shoot subjects that move fast, like animals or sports, use a fast shutter speed between 1/60th and 1/4000th of a second. ISO. The ISO setting can be tricky to master. The ISO setting is the light sensitivity to the camera lenses that affect the noise and exposure in your photographs. If you have good lighting conditions, you can set your camera to a low ISO like 100 through 400. Unfortunately, you'll encounter low light conditions and you will need to have your ISO at a higher settings. That can range from anywhere from 800 ISO upwards. Do bear in mind, depending on the camera system that you're using, the cost of shooting at low light might be hindered with grain. Most modern mirrorless systems can handle higher ISO settings no problem. Okay, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the camera mode settings. And commonly, you'll be able to find the camera mode settings on the top of the camera. P mode or program mode. The P mode will automatically set aperture and shutter speed settings. This one is a great mode to use if you're a beginner and unsure what to do with your settings. S or TV mode, which is commonly referred to as your shutter priority. This one is a manual mode for using your shutter speed, and the camera will automatically set your aperture. This option works well when you know what shutter speed you want to use but are still unsure about the aperture. A or AV mode or your aperture priority mode. On the opposite end of shutter priority mode, this camera setting will set the shutter speed for you while you control the aperture. This is handy for portraits and shooting in low light situations where the shutter will adjust for you automatically. M mode or manual mode. This mode will give you complete control of your settings. This one's the ultimate mode since you have all the control. Once you're comfortable with your settings, you can capture photographs at their best with manual mode. Metering modes. The metering modes are great when you need to measure the light, and this will be a crucial mode when taking either night photographs or sunny conditions. This setting will show you an exposure value, EV, and will show you if the photo is correctly exposed. You can change these settings through the menu or function buttons, and you might even see the options through direct buttons. Multi-matrix metering. This mode will help you understand the light and overall photo and split them into different zones. This one's usually the default mode. Center weighted metering. As the name implies, this mode uses a center to evaluate the light. This one is the best option when you're taking a headshot. Spot metering. Here you can use a focal point to calculate your light. If you want to photograph something small, this will be the best mode. Focus camera settings. Another crucial camera setting to take sharp and clear photos is the focus. Keep in mind that although the focus mode is the same for every camera, some cameras will utilize different names. The focus modes determine whether the camera will lock or continue adjusting the focus. And here are some of the modes. AFS, one-shot AF, or single autofocus mode. This mode will automatically lock focus on a subject. The downside is it won't continuously focus if your subject moves. This mode will be the best for still subjects. AFC, AI-Servo, or continuous autofocus mode. Here's a setting that works well with wildlife or sports. In this mode, your focus will stay on the subject. Focus area settings. These modes concentrate more on the photo settings instead of the camera itself. The dials for these modes can change for each device, but usually you'll find these settings in the menu. Single point AF, manual AF point. During this mode, you'll select your focus point. Use this mode during landscape, macro photography, or portrait photography. Dynamic AF area, AF point expansion. Here's a mode that will stay in your subject, and if it moves, we'll try to track. The dynamic AF area is another mode best used for sports and wildlife. Auto AF area, automatic AF point selection. This mode will automatically pick a focus point. The auto AF area mode is ideal for a simple subject or a close-up. And that's a wrap for focus area settings. Next up is white balance. White balance is a simple setting to help achieve perfect colors in your photos. You'll be able to control the color temperatures measured in kelvins, and the higher the number, the cooler the colors. White balance is another setting that varies from camera to camera, and you should be able to access this through the camera settings. If you need a refresher on white balance, we did do a video on that, so definitely check that one out. Automatic white balance. Using this mode will automatically adjust your white balance. Automatic white balance is typically a default and one of the more popular settings for white balance. White balance presets, or semi-automatic white balance. Using this mode will give you various presets to match different color temperatures. Use this mode when you're in scenes with a dominating light. White balance manual camera setting, or custom white balance mode. Use the white balance manual setting when shooting at night or when your light can change quickly. This setting can be manually adjusted and makes it perfect for product photography. You can also change this setting during post-processing if you shoot in RAW. And that covers all the common white balance settings found in most cameras. File format settings. Using this setting will enable you to shoot in RAW. Shooting in RAW is perfect for photographs that need a lot of post-processing. RAW format photographs will give you more information than JPEGs. You can find the file format settings in the camera's menu. The last batch of major settings we're going to discuss today is drive modes. First up, you have your tried and true single shot. This mode is as simple as pressing the shutter button. Pressing the shutter in this mode will take a single photo. Continuous or burst mode. Pressing the shutter in this mode will allow your camera to take several photos. Some cameras will even offer the option of low or high burst options. Shutter delay. The delay will take a photo after a designated time, either in 2, 5, or 10-second increments. This mode is useful when shooting from a tripod to prevent shaking during long exposure photography. And of course, it's the go-to standard for selfies and group photos. And that's a wrap for drive modes. Lastly, let's go over the other essential settings you'll want to know. While in mirror lockup, the camera will lift the mirror to prevent a mirror slap. This mode is best with slow shutter speeds. Also, if you're looking to clean the sensor of your DSLR, this is the way to do it. Just be mindful though, you do not want to scratch up that sensor. Image stabilization. This camera setting is great if you want to shoot handheld with slow shutter speeds. Many cameras now offer outstanding image stabilization. You can locate this setting in your camera's menu, and with some lenses you can actually change the image stabilization from the lens itself. HDR DRO. Here's somewhat of a newer setting to achieve high dynamic range. Since this one is still a new concept, some photographers aren't fond of it. Some people aren't fond of it because it simply does not give a natural HDR look. You can achieve this look through post-processing, and you can access the setting from your camera functions. Whew, and I believe that encompasses about all the major buttons, settings, and camera modes commonly found in most camera systems. Again, I went over a ton of info on this one, and if you'd like to recap and go about it on your own pace, feel free to read up on the full article in our blog post page. There really isn't much else to say. Understand your settings, and eventually flipping through the modes and menus will become second nature to you. If you found the video helpful, liking and subscribing would help us out plenty. If you happen to have any other questions, feel free to let us know in the comments section. Once more, this is Raf from BNC Camera, and thanks for tuning in.